Okay, today we're out here in the New River Gorge and we're out here to take a look at lowering systems. After reviewing a lot of different lowering systems that have been published in manuals, put in diagrams, we have found the majority of them to be lacking. A lot of them are absolutely incorrect. Some are absolutely dangerous. And so we're going to come out here today, look at some basic lowering systems, including the munter, the gree-gree, redirected plates, and also how to release your ATC guide or your reverso safely. We're going to start out with the munter hitch today, and generally when I'm using a munter hitch, I'm looking at small to medium-sized people to lower with this. It has good friction, but not a whole lot of friction. Okay, and I also like to put an extra backup when using the munter called an auto block backup. So first, let's take a look at how to build the munter. First step is I like to clip it into a locking carabiner and make sure you're using an HMS carabiner, commonly known as a parabiner in America. It's got the nice wide head, allows the munter to run smoothly and rock back and forth into both the jump and take positions that it operates in. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a loop. There's your loop. And you'll notice that the brake strand is going behind the load. And then I'm simply going to clip that loop in. Lock the carabiner. And at this point I have a correct munter. I want to make sure that the load-bearing strand going to the person being lowered is against the spine and the brake strand is out here on the gate. All right, so at this point our munter's set up. We're going to go ahead and have our climber make their way into the system. This is Becca. As you can see, Becca is not a large person. Okay, a munter's a really good application for her. What we are going to do is we're going to add one extra bit of safety. Takes just a second to do, known as a auto block backup. And what we're going to do is clip a locking carabiner into our belay loop, and then we're going to take our prusik, and we're just going to make about 3 to 4 wraps around the rope. How many you make can be dictated by the diameter of the rope that you're using. If you're using a lighter, smaller rope, maybe more wraps, more friction. And just make sure that all your coils of your friction hitch are laying nice and flat and neat against the rope so that it has good grabbing power. So Becca, you can go ahead and move on into the system, move out to the edge, get a nice wide stance. Okay, we're going to get ready to lower you off here. You can go ahead and come on over towards me a little bit. There you go. When we operate the munter, there's a couple things we want to make sure of. You might have heard that the munter hitch twists ropes. And what I always tell people is the munter hitch doesn't twist the rope. If you don't operate it correctly, it will twist the rope. And the key thing with the munter is keeping your brake strand and your load strand parallel to each other. All right. If I start to split these angles out wide, that is what creates the twist when operating the munter. So I'm going to begin to lower Becca down. I can keep the auto block broken open. Nice, smooth, clean lower. Should I lose control of the system, the auto block will slide up and act, grab the rope, okay, and keep Becca from falling. At the same time, it puts some friction into the system. I can easily keep it broken open. Keeps the heat off my hand, gives me a nice, smooth, safe lower. And again, if I slip, it locks up, gives me a quick hands-free brake, keep the climber from hitting the ground. And that's your munter hitch in a nutshell. The next system we're going to look at is using the gree-gree to lower. A lot of people are big fans of the gree-gree, and it's a great device if you know how to use it correctly. Step 1 after rigging it up is always double check your gree-gree, make sure that it's loaded correctly. And that the camming device is working. And once we get here, we're ready for our climber to go ahead and come on into the system, get ready to be lowered. Belay them on in. You'll notice we're using a Freno carabiner here. This is specifically designed for the gree-gree, and it's really useful when doing lowers, because whenever we lower somebody, we want to redirect the brake strand. This is going to give us a higher amount of friction, okay, and really allow us to give the person a very nice, smooth lower. We have the climber ready to go. Becca can go ahead and make her way into position. Keep her tight as she comes in. Let her go ahead and sit down. We can see the gree-gree enact. And the nice thing about the redirect here is it's going to allow us to really open this handle up and give her a nice smooth lower by controlling the redirect strand here. So I can begin to gently lower her over the edge. And down she goes at a nice controlled lower. The nice thing about the gree-gree, we never recommend letting go of the brake strand, but it has that auto block backup built into it with the automatic cam device. So if I do let go of the handle, lose a little bit of control, if it's rigged correctly, it should grab the climber. Again, though, it is not a hands-free device. Always keep one hand on the brake strand when lowering or belaying. And we can go ahead and let her go all the way on down to the ground. Okay, so if you don't happen to own a Freno carabiner to go with your gree-gree, there are several other ways that you can redirect this brake strand to make things work. On our Cordelette system here, we have a high shelf, all right, so we can put a carabiner through the shelf, just redirect the brake strand up through there, and it will achieve the same thing as before, where we have a nice redirected brake strand, making for a smooth lower. If you're using an anchor that doesn't have a shelf, if you have solid bolts, you could go all the way up to the bolt, or you can even just put two carabiners side by side, like so, and it'll still work and achieve the same effect of redirecting the brake strand, okay, for the lower. So these are some options, just in case you don't own a Freno, to redirect your brake strand on your gree-gree to make lowering a little bit safer and a little bit simpler. We're going to look at a redirected plate, and one thing that I want to emphasize is that we never ever put a plate device directly onto the anchor without redirecting a brake strand, okay, at least not in this mode. If we do so and we go to lower somebody, basically all we have is a very simple pulley. There is no friction in this system. If you try to lower somebody down, you're going to end up burning your hands and probably dropping that person to the ground. So there's a couple things we want to do here to add some extra safety into the system. One, and this is mandatory, is to redirect the brake strand up into a high point. And what that will do will be to put the brake strand into the braking plane where we actually have a very high friction lower. Okay, and we'll be able to control the client's descent or your climber's descent. The other thing we can do here is the same thing that we did when we used the Munter hitch, and that is to add an auto block back up into place. And in this scenario, we have a much heavier, much larger climber that we're going to be lowering. So we're putting a higher friction system in. This right here, it's going to give us a good bit more friction than the Munter hitch did. All right. So at this point, we are ready to go ahead and begin to lower. Make sure that we strip the rope through. Keep things nice and tight as you work your way in. And whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and begin to move on over. And go ahead and lean on back and load the rope. And we can see even without the auto block backup here, very high friction, okay? Gives me a lot of control on the lower. How much do you weigh?
220.
220. And okay, look at this. I'm sliding the rope gently through a thumb and a finger, all right? So I can lower a lot of weight very smoothly with this particular system. And again, if I add an auto block backup to it, all right, that's going to give me a lot of safety. Should I get hit by a falling rock or lose control of the system in any way, it's going to stop my climber from hitting the ground. All right, and then I can just release this, and this gives me a super smooth, super nice lower for larger, heavier climbers. The version of the redirected plate that I commonly see in diagrams is a redirected plate, which is a high friction lowering system already, backed up by a Munter hitch. And here's what I'm going to tell you about that. It does not work in real life. Okay, here we have a 220-pound climber. Okay, yeah, my hand is still on the brake strand, but you can see he's got his full weight on there and he's not going anywhere. And now what I would like you to do, Kyle, is bounce. Try to make yourself go somewhere. Okay, all right. So what we find with this system is it's just overbuilt. It has way too much friction. The only reason I might choose to use a system like this is I, for some reason, had to lower two large people at once. I could lower about 700 pounds with this. The Munter tends to jam into your knot up here when you redirect it off the high point, when lowering, what you'll find is your rope is constantly rubbing against your cordelette, okay, and it will begin to burn, glaze the surface of your cordelette, causing it to break down much quicker. With the rope itself, a different piece of rope is touching the cordelette as it runs through, so the rope doesn't burn up. You know, it doesn't get enough friction going on to really glaze it, but it will put some more wear and tear on your rope. And in order to work this system, you actually have to really pull the rope very hard through here, okay, and it just doesn't work. Our best version of the redirected plate is just to redirect and then put an auto block back up on for safety, and that is super smooth and works very nice for us. What we're going to look at next is ATC guides, reversos, what are technically known as plaquette devices, and how to release those correctly to lower a climber should you need to do so. Now, in some of the manuals that I've seen, I see a very incorrect, very dangerous way of doing this. The method that we're going to demonstrate now has actually caused several accidents. We are showing you specifically the wrong way because we don't want you to do what I'm about to do. And then we're going to show you the right way to release this next. So if you go look in your diagrams that are out there, you will commonly see that people will take a sling and attach the sling to the nose, this nice little hole right here, and they'll just girth hitch it through. And then what they're going to do is they're going to redirect the tail end of the sling up through a high point. And then they either step on this, or what they're going to do is clip it into their belay loop and sit down on it to release this to use their body weight. There's a couple of problems with this. As we looked earlier, we saw that with a redirected plate, we always needed to redirect the brake strand. What I want you to see is as I put my full weight on this and release it, if we can get a kind of a tight angle shot on that, I'm sitting back. I have no friction in this system at all right here. All I have is a pulley. So imagine that you do this in, say, a hanging belay situation, okay, or you're standing on a small ledge up off the ground getting ready to lower somebody, and you slip and you put your full weight on here. There's no friction. You can see you can just pull the rope right through, all right? And what has happened is this has actually happened twice to my knowledge where, again, people have fully weighted this. They've opened this up all the way. It burns their hands. They lose control. Climber hits ground, okay? So absolutely, if you are going to do this, the one key step that needs to be added is just to redirect the braking strand. That way, when we sit down and unload this, we're now into configuration that is a redirected plate, proper configuration. Make sure that you redirect the brake strand through a high point. Lock your carabiners, and if you want to add some extra safety to it, we can also add our auto block backup. The key thing, again, in this situation is never release this without redirecting the brake strand through a high point. As long as you do that, you'll have a pretty high friction lowering system, be able to maintain control of the climber that you're lowering. But we can also add the auto block system in there, boom, for a nice hands-free grab should we lose control, and it will also add a little more friction into the system as we're lowering somebody. So what we're going to look at is actually using this to lower somebody down. Right now it is in plaquette mode, and what I'm going to do is redirect the strand. Okay, so I have a nice redirected plate at this point, And then I'm gonna sit down, and I got a pretty heavy climber on here, so I'm gonna have to sit down pretty hard to release this. Okay, but now I can give him a nice smooth lower by sitting down hard against here. And you can see, again, large heavy guy, nice easy lower. If I want some extra safety, I could have put my auto block back up in place. If I lose control, the auto block will cinch up, grab a hold of my climber, keep them from hitting the deck. So again, guys, when releasing a plaquette device, your ATC guide or reverso, please make sure you redirect your brake strand, or there's a good chance you will drop somebody.